The mess hall on Threshold Station smelled like a dozen different worlds, all competing for dominance. Rick Donnelly had learned to ignore it months ago, focusing instead on the bland protein block on his tray. Around him, soldiers from across the Galactic Coalition laughed and argued in a mixture of languages, their translator implants working overtime. He preferred the corner table, away from the main flow of traffic. It gave him a clear view of the exits and let him eat in relative peace. Today that peace was about to end, I'm telling you, human military history is complete fiction. Bravik's voice carried across 3 tables, his reptilian throat sac inflating with each word. The Thuranian soldier was holding court with a group of younger recruits, all of them hanging on his every word. They claimed to have fought wars with nothing but metal projectiles and chemical explosives. A few soldiers laughed. Rick kept eating. My favorite is this Thermopylae story, Bravik continued, his tail slapping the floor for emphasis. 300 soldiers holding off millions. Pure propaganda. The numbers don't even make sense. Scylla, a Pelthian observer with multifaceted eyes, tilted her insectoid head. The records were verified by coalition historians, she offered quietly. Records can be faked. Bravik shot back. Humans needed to look tough when they joined the coalition, so they invented a glorious military past. It's obvious if you think about it. Grant, a massive Horvath, who looked like someone had taught a bear to walk upright, grunted, "Humans are weak. No natural armor, no claws, poor sensory range. How would they survive real combat?" Exactly my point. Bravik gestured wildly. Look at them. They're soft. Their planet isn't even that dangerous compared to real death worlds. The whole thing is manufactured mythology. Rick's fork paused halfway to his mouth for just a moment. Then he continued eating. What about their endurance claims? Asked a YSS, a feline. Stryfen, whose spots shifted color with her mood. I've heard humans can run for days without stopping. Bravik's laugh was harsh. More fairy tales. No species can maintain pursuit for that long. It's biologically impossible. They probably chased some animal for an hour and turned it into an epic legend. The group laughed again. Several other tables were listening now, amused by Bravik's performance. And don't get me started on their supposed psychological warfare. Bravik was warming to his subject. They claimed to have won battles through fear and intimidation, as if pre-spaceflight primitives understood advanced combat psychology. Rick finished his protein block and started on the vegetable mixture. His jaw was tight, but his expression remained neutral. Scylla's eyes tracked to Rick's table. She'd noticed him weeks ago, the quiet human who never joined the usual soldier bravado. He was older than most stationed here, with gray threading through his dark hair and lines around his eyes that suggested he'd spent a lot of time squinting at distant horizons. The battle records from their Second World War are particularly absurd. Bravik continued. They claim millions of casualties, entire cities destroyed, years of continuous fighting with primitive technology. If warfare was that brutal, their species would have gone extinct. Maybe they're tougher than they look, Grant suggested, though his tone made it clear he didn't believe it. Tough, Bravik scoffed. I've sparred with humans in training. They're fragile. One good hit and they fold. No, their legends are compensation for physical inadequacy. It's actually kind of sad when you think about it. More laughter. Even some of the other species who'd been ignoring the conversation were smiling now. Rick placed his fork down carefully. He picked up his tray and stood. Hey, human, Bravik called out. You've been awfully quiet over there. Don't you want to defend your species' glorious fictional past? The mess hall went quiet. All eyes turned to Rick. He walked toward the disposal unit, his movements economical and unhurried. For a moment it seemed he would simply ignore the challenge. Then he paused near Bravik's table. I noticed you mentioned Thermopylae, Rick said, his voice level and calm. You've got the numbers wrong. It wasn't 300. It was 300 Spartans plus about 7,000 other Greeks. And they didn't hold off millions. More like 100,000 Persians. Maybe 200,000. Bravik's throat sac puffed up. So you admit the numbers were exaggerated. I'm saying you should get your facts straight before calling something fiction. Rick replied. They held for 3 days, killed somewhere around 20,000 enemy soldiers. The Persians won eventually, but it cost them dearly. That's not propaganda. That's just what happened. You weren't there, Bravik sneered. None of your kind were. These are stories passed down for thousands of years, embellished. With each telling, Rick's expression didn't change. Believe what you want. History doesn't need your validation. He turned to leave. What's the matter? Bravik stood, his height advantage over the human obvious. Can't handle a little honest analysis of your species' fairy tales. Maybe you humans are too emotionally weak for military service after all. Rick stopped at the doorway. He didn't turn around. I handled it just fine. You're the one who seems bothered. He walked out. The mess hall remained quiet for a moment before Bravik forced a laugh. Typical human. All bluster, no substance. His group laughed with him, but it sounded forced. Scylla watched the door where Rick had exited. Something in his eyes had caught her attention. Not anger or hurt. Something else. Something patient and old and very, very tired. Commander Orith entered the mess hall from the opposite entrance. The avian officer's feathers ruffled as he overheard the tail end of the conversation. What's so funny? Bravik, Orith asked. Just discussing human military mythology, sir. Bravik replied, still grinning. Orith's predatory eyes fixed on the Thuranian. I see. His tone suggested he saw quite a lot. Well, you'll have plenty of time to contemplate mythology. Mixed species survival training starts tomorrow. 72 hours in the wilderness zone. He paused at the door. Donnelly will be on your team. I'm sure you'll find it educational. The commander left. Bravik's grin faded slightly. Scylla's compound eyes tracked between the door and Bravik's suddenly uncertain expression. This was going to be interesting. Sweat ran down Bravik's scaled face as the team pushed through dense undergrowth. The wilderness zone mimicked a hostile jungle planet, complete with oppressive humidity and vegetation that seemed designed to cut, snag, and generally make life miserable. This route is inefficient, Rick said quietly, studying his handheld terrain mapper. We should move northwest. Use the ridge line. I'm leading this team. Bravik snapped. We go straight to the extraction point. It's the fastest route on the map. Rick said nothing. He adjusted his pack and kept walking. The team consisted of 5 soldiers. Bravik as self-appointed leader, Rick as tracker, Scylla handling communications and sensors, Grant carrying heavy equipment, and LYSS scouting ahead. They'd been moving for 6 hours, and already Bravik's fastest route was proving problematic. Contact, LYSS's voice crackled over their comm units. Hunter drone, 200 meters ahead. Standard patrol pattern. Hunter drones were part of the exercise, automated units programmed to track and tag teams with marker rounds. Getting tagged meant point deductions. Getting tagged too many times meant automatic failure. We can circle around, Rick suggested, pointing to his mapper. There's a gully system to the east. That adds an hour to our time. Bravik objected. We'll just move quietly past it. 20 minutes later, the drone's alarm shrieked as it locked onto their position. The team scattered, running through thorny underbrush as marker rounds splattered around them. Move, move, Bravik shouted unnecessarily. Everyone was already moving. They lost the drone after a frantic 10-minute chase, but Grant had taken a bad fall during the escape. The big Horvath was limping, his left knee swelling visibly. I'm fine, Grant insisted, but his grimace said otherwise. Rick knelt beside him without asking permission. His hands were surprisingly gentle as they probed the injury. Sprained, not torn, he assessed. You can walk, but we need to support it. He pulled cord from his pack and began fashioning a compression wrap. His movements were practiced, efficient. Where did you learn medical treatment? Scylla asked. Here and there, Rick replied, securing the wrap. Can you put weight on it? Grant tested his leg. Better. Thanks. Bravik watched with poorly concealed frustration. His perfect plan was falling apart, and the quiet human kept solving problems. Night fell fast in the wilderness zone. The team made camp in a clearing that Bravik selected. Rick walked the perimeter without comment, then quietly set up his shelter 20 meters away. Why is he over there? LYSS asked. Who cares? Bravik muttered. Probably sulking because I won't follow his suggestions. But over the next hour, the team members drifted toward Rick's area. He found a natural spring, and set up a filtration system using local materials. His shelter was positioned to catch morning sun while remaining hidden from above. He'd even created a small reflector to direct heat from their allowed fire source. "You can set up here if you want," Rick offered when Scylla approached. "Ground is drier on this side." Soon everyone except Bravik had relocated. The Thuranian sat alone at his original site, pride preventing him from admitting the human had chosen better. The second day started badly. Bravik's direct route led them to an unexpected canyon system. The walls were steep, the bottom filled with loose rock. "We go around," Bravik decided. Rick studied his mapper. "That's 8 hours minimum. We can cross here." He pointed to a narrow section. "I'll rig a rope system." "Too dangerous," Bravik said flatly. "More dangerous than missing our extraction window," Rick asked. "Those hunter drones reset their patterns every 12 hours. By tonight, they'll be saturating this area. We cross now, or we fail." Grant spoke up. "I trust the human's judgment. He hasn't been wrong yet." Bravik's throat sack inflated with anger. "Fine, but if anyone gets hurt, it's on you, Donnelly." Rick just nodded and started working. He used their climbing rope and natural anchor points to create a crossing system. It wasn't fancy, but it was solid. He tested it first, moving across the canyon with steady confidence. One at a time, he called back, "Scylla, you're lightest. Come across." The Pelthian made it safely. Then LYSS, moving with feline grace, Grant went next. The rope system creaking under his weight, but holding firm. Bravik crossed last, his pride forcing him to move faster than safe. Halfway across, his foot slipped on the wet rock. He caught himself, but the sudden jerk sent a spike of adrenaline through his system. He hung there for a moment, realizing how far he could have fallen. "Take your time." Rick's voice was calm from the other side. "The rope will hold. Just keep moving steady." Bravik made it across. He didn't thank Rick. That night they made camp in a cave system Rick had spotted from the canyon. It was defensible, dry, and invisible from aerial surveillance. "How do you know this stuff?" LYSS asked as Rick showed her how to set up a water catch system. "Experience," Rick replied. "What kind of experience?" she pressed. Rick was quiet for a moment. "The kind you get when technology fails and you have to rely on basics. Terrain reading, resource management, threat assessment. It's all the same whether you're on Earth or a jungle planet. You've fought in wars," Scylla stated. "It wasn't a question, yeah," Rick said simply. "Real wars," she continued. "Not training exercises, real enough." Rick's expression was distant. "Look, it's ancient history. What matters now is getting to extraction," but Scylla's analytical mind was working. The way Rick moved through terrain, his constant situational awareness, his calm in crisis. These weren't skills learned in peacetime training. The third morning started with alarms blaring on their comm units. Commander Ortha's voice crackled through. "All teams, emergency situation. Pirate landing detected near extraction zone. Multiple hostiles, armed and dangerous. All teams are to avoid contact and await reinforcements." Then another message, encrypted for their team only. "Donnelly's team, you're closest to enemy position. Provide reconnaissance if possible. Do not engage." Bravik stared at the comm unit. "We fall back. Let the professionals handle this." Rick was studying the terrain mapper. "They have hostages. 3 civilians. Extraction team personnel. How do you know that?" Bravik demanded. "Because that's what pirates do," Rick replied. "They take leverage, and reinforcements are 6 hours out. Those hostages don't have 6 hours. You can't possibly know that." Rick looked up. His eyes had changed. Something cold and certain had replaced the quiet patience. "Yeah, I can." Rick lay prone on a ridge overlooking the pirate encampment. Through his optical scope, he counted enemies, assessed weapons, noted defensive positions. His breathing was slow and controlled. Everything about him had changed from the quiet soldier who ate alone in the mess hall. 20 hostiles, he reported. Standard mercenary gear, nothing military grade. Sloppy perimeter security. They're confident nobody will challenge them before reinforcements arrive. "They're right," Bravik hissed from beside him. "We're 5 against 20. This is insane. 5 trained soldiers against 20 overconfident pirates." Rick corrected. "Different math." Scylla monitored her sensor equipment. "The hostages are in the central structure. Life signs weak but stable. They've been beaten. Rick's jaw tightened. Time matters. Grant, can you still move with that knee? I can fight. The Horvath rumbled. LYSS, your night vision is better than ours. Can you identify sentry positions? The strife spots. Shifted to dark patterns. 6 sentries. 2-hour rotation. They're bored and undisciplined. Rick nodded. Bravik, your thermal vision. Can you track movement through the structure walls? Bravik wanted to refuse. Wanted to order retreat. But something in Rick's tone made it clear this wasn't a debate. Yes, then here's what we do. Rick began outlining a plan that made Bravik's blood run cold. That's guerrilla warfare, Scylla observed. Asymmetric tactics. This is from human military doctrine. This is from common sense, Rick replied. Use what works. First, we make them think they're facing a larger force. Scylla can use spoof sensor readings. I can create ghost signatures, she confirmed. Make it look like reinforcements arrived early. Do it, Rick said. Spread them across this ridge. Make it look like we have 20, 30 soldiers. Pirates will see those signatures and panic. Then what? LYSS asked. Then we use their panic. Rick's voice was calm, almost gentle. Frightened people make mistakes. We'll be there to capitalize on those mistakes. You've done this before, Bravik said. Wasn't a question. Rick didn't answer. He was already moving into position. The next hour was educational for everyone watching Rick work. He moved through terrain like water, using every shadow and contour. When he signaled LYSS to follow, she realized she was watching a master at work. Stay behind me. Step where I step, Rick whispered. We take the eastern sentries first. Quiet, LYSS had trained in stealth. She was good at it. Watching Rick, she realized she was adequate at best. He moved with absolute confidence, each placement of his feet deliberate. No wasted motion, no hesitation. The first sentry never knew what happened. Rick's takedown was textbook perfect, silent, efficient, permanent. LYSS eliminated the second with her blade. 2 down. Rick reported on their private channel. Scylla, how's the sensor ghost? Working perfectly, Scylla replied. They're panicking. I'm reading increased comm traffic. They think a coalition strike team is surrounding them. Good. Maintain pressure. Grant, you ready for phase 2? Ready, the Horvath confirmed. Rick had positioned Grant on high ground with his heavy weapon. Wait for my signal. Then put precision fire on the structure's corners. Not to kill, to intimidate. Make them think they're being bracketed by multiple shooters. Bravik watched through his scope as Rick's plan unfolded. The pirates were scrambling, shouting at each other. Their defensive formation was breaking down. Some wanted to flee, others to fight. Nobody was in command. Now Grant. The heavy weapon's distinctive sound echoed across the valley. Stone exploded from the structure's corners exactly where Rick had indicated. The pirates dove for cover. LYSS, take the western approach. I'll come from the east. Scylla, adjust your ghosts. Make them think they're being flanked. Rick was running now, using the confusion. Bravik watched him move and finally understood what human warfare really looked like. It wasn't about superior technology or physical strength. It was about reading your enemy, exploiting weakness, maintaining pressure. Rick's combat skills were devastating. 3 pirates went down before the others realized he was among them. He used their own cover against them, turned their defensive positions into traps. Every movement was calculated, every shot precise. Bravik, Rick's voice was sharp. Target the eastern group. They're about to flank LYSS. Bravik hesitated. Then he saw what Rick saw. The pattern of movement, the tactical adjustment the pirates were making. He took the shot. 1 pirate down. Good shot. Again, 2 more on your right. Bravik followed Rick's targeting. Found himself falling into a rhythm. Rick would spot, Bravik would shoot. It was like Rick could see the entire battlefield at once. Scylla's sensors showed the battle's progress. They're breaking. Half their force down or surrendered. But the remaining pirates had fortified around the hostages. The standoff Rick had predicted was developing. All teams hold position. Rick ordered. He approached the structure carefully, hands visible but carrying his rifle with casual confidence. You there, in the building? Rick's voice was conversational. You know you're surrounded. You know half your people are down. You know reinforcements are coming. So let's talk about your options. The pirate leader's voice was shaky. We have hostages, I know, Rick replied, which is why I'm offering you a choice. Walk away now. You face piracy charges, nothing fatal. But if you hurt those hostages, I stop being professional. I start being personal. You don't want that. You're bluffing. Rick's laugh was cold. I counted your ammunition expenditure. You're down to maybe 20 rounds between all of you. I know your defensive positions. I know you have no exit strategy. This isn't a bluff. This is me being generous with time I don't have. Silence from the building. Here's what happens next, Rick continued. I've already positioned shooters where they can take clean shots the moment you make a mistake. And you will make a mistake. You're tired, scared, and outmatched. So save yourself the pain. Send the hostages out. You follow with hands visible. Nobody else has to die today. How do we know you won't shoot us? Because I said so. Rick's voice carried absolute certainty. I've killed enough people today. I'd rather not add to the count. But I will if you force me. Another long silence. Then movement at the door. The hostages stumbled out, beaten but alive. The pirates followed, hands raised. Bravik watched it all through his scope. The quiet human from the mess hall had just orchestrated a perfect tactical victory. Using psychology, terrain, and his team's individual strengths. History doesn't need validation. Bravik whispered, understanding finally dawning. Commander Orith arrived with reinforcements to find the situation completely resolved. Pirates secured, hostages receiving medical attention, and Rick's team standing watch with professional calm. Report, Orith commanded. Bravik stepped forward. Sir, we engaged the pirate force per tactical necessity. Hostages were at immediate risk. Donnelly coordinated the assault. 0 friendly casualties. 3 civilian hostages recovered safely. 20 enemy combatants neutralized or captured. Orith's predatory eyes fixed on Rick. Donnelly, you disobeyed the order to avoid engagement. Yes, sir, Rick replied. His tone was respectful but unapologetic. Hostages wouldn't have survived long enough for reinforcements. Made the call. I see. Orith's feathers smoothed. And the tactical approach. Standard asymmetric warfare. Used available resources, exploited enemy weaknesses, maintained psychological pressure until they broke. Rick's delivery was matter of fact. Nothing fancy, Scylla stepped. Forward, sir, if I may. Donnelly's tactical coordination was exceptional. He utilized each team member's strengths perfectly. I have sensor logs of the entire engagement if you want details. I'll review them. Orith nodded. Medical team, get those hostages to the station. Security, transport the prisoners. Donnelly's team, you're off duty for 48 hours. Dismissed. As the commander walked away, Rick heard him mutter, humans and their definition of nothing fancy. Back at the station, the team headed for the showers. Bravik caught Rick's arm. We need to talk later, Rick said. I need to clean up. An hour later, Bravik found Rick in the observation deck. The human was staring out at the stars, a cup of something hot in his hands. I was wrong, Bravik said without preamble. In the mess hall, about human military history. I was completely wrong. Rick took a sip from his cup. Yeah, I spent the last 3 days researching. Bravik continued. Everything I could access. About Earth conflicts. The numbers alone are staggering. Your Second World War, over 60 million casualties. The Battle of Stalingrad lasted 5 months. 5 months of constant urban combat in winter. Your species fought that way for years. We did, Rick acknowledged. How? Bravik's voice cracked. How did you survive wars like that? 1 day at a time. Rick replied. Same as anyone survives anything. You wake up, you do your job, you try to keep your people alive. You don't think about the big numbers, just the next hour, the next objective. But the conditions, the primitive technology, the sheer brutality of it all. Rick finally looked at Bravik. You called it primitive. Maybe it was, but primitive doesn't mean ineffective. It means direct. It means personal. Every human soldier in those wars looked their enemy in the eye. No drones, no orbital strikes, just people fighting people. It taught us things you can't learn from advanced warfare. What things? That war is always personal. Always. no matter how advanced your technology gets, that protecting your people matters more than protecting yourself. That fear is a tool, not a weakness. That sometimes the only thing between victory and defeat is refusing to quit. Rick's voice was quiet but firm. Those aren't primitive lessons. Those are universal ones. Bravik was silent for a moment. What did you do before the coalition? What was your role? Rick hesitated. Then, infantry, specialized in training allied forces, spent time in Iraq, Afghanistan, some peacekeeping missions in Africa, taught local soldiers how to defend their homes. How many battles? Enough to know I don't want to count them. Rick's expression was distant. Enough to know what works and what doesn't. Enough to sleep poorly most nights. The tactics you use today against the pirates, I've never seen anything like it. Sure you have, Rick countered. You just didn't recognize it. Humans didn't invent guerrilla warfare. We just refined it through necessity. When you can't match your enemy's strength, you use speed. When you can't match their technology, you use terrain. When you can't match their numbers, you use psychology. It's all in the historical records. We've been doing it for thousands of years. Grant appeared at the observation deck entrance. Thought I'd find you both here. LYSS and Scylla followed him in. We wanted to say thanks, Grant rumbled. You kept us alive out there. Team effort. Rick deflected. Scylla's sensor work was crucial. LYSS's stealth skills, Grant's marksmanship, Bravik's thermal vision. Everyone contributed. But you coordinated it, Scylla insisted. You saw the whole battlefield, made us into something greater than the sum of our parts. That's leadership. That's just experience, Rick said. No. Bravik shook his head. It's more than that. I watched you work today. Really watched. You weren't just experienced. You were comfortable, like combat was a second language to you. Rick was quiet. How many wars has humanity fought? Scylla asked. Total. Across your entire history. Rick actually laughed. Though it was bitter, historians argue about it. Thousands, tens of thousands maybe. We've been fighting since before we had writing to record it. Sticks and stones, bronze and iron, gunpowder and nuclear weapons. We've fought with everything. And you wonder why we thought it was exaggerated. Bravik said, No, Rick replied. I understand why you doubted. Most species join the coalition after their first major conflict shocks them into seeking peace. Humans joined after thousands of years of nearly constant warfare. It doesn't make sense from the outside. How could we survive that? How did you? LYSS asked. Adaptation. Rick said simply. Every war taught us something. Made us better at surviving the next one. We learned to fight in deserts, jungles, mountains, cities, trenches, skies, seas. We learned to fight with everything and nothing. We learned that. The will to protect what matters is more powerful than any weapon. He turned back to the window. But we also learned what war costs. What it takes from you. Those battles you mocked, Bravik, Thermopylae, D-Day, Stalingrad, they weren't glorious. They were necessary. And the people who fought them paid prices you can't imagine. The observation deck was quiet. Finally, Bravik spoke. I owe you an apology. Not just for doubting human history, for disrespecting the people who lived it. Rick nodded. Apology accepted. Now can we please talk about something else? I've had enough war for 1 week. Grant laughed. Agreed. Who wants to get food? I'm buying. As they headed for the mess hall together, Scylla noticed something. Bravik walked beside Rick now. Not in front, not behind, beside. As equals, the legend had proven true, and in doing so had earned something more valuable than fear. Respect. 3 days after the pirate incident, the mess hall was different. Word had spread through the station about what happened in the wilderness zone. When Rick entered for breakfast, conversations quieted. Soldiers nodded respectfully. Some even moved aside to give him space. He hated it. Rick grabbed his tray and headed for his usual corner table. Before he could sit, Bravik appeared with a data tablet. Mind if I join you? The Thuranian asked. Rick gestured to the empty seat. Bravik settled in his movements more careful than usual. I've been doing research, a lot of research, about human military history. So you said, Rick started eating? No, I mean really digging into it. Bravik's throat sac was deflated, his tone subdued. Battle of Thermopylae. I had the numbers wrong. But the principle was right. 3 days against impossible odds. The Persian Empire, the largest military force in the known world at that time, delayed by a few thousand Greeks in a mountain pass. Strategic. Choke point, Rick said between bites. Good terrain usage. Classic defensive strategy. It's more than that, though. Bravik continued. They knew they would die. The Spartans knew they weren't coming home. They went anyway, to buy time for their people to prepare. That's not just tactics, that's sacrifice. Rick was quiet for a moment. Yeah, it is indeed a. Bravik scrolled through his tablet. The Normandy landings. Thousands of soldiers dropped into fortified positions. The casualty. Projections were horrendous. They went anyway. Why? Because someone had to, Rick replied, and they were the ones who could. Scylla joined them, carrying her own breakfast. I've been analyzing the tactical doctrine from yesterday's engagement, cross-referencing with historical Earth conflicts. The pattern matches are remarkable. You used element from at least 5 different human military traditions. I used what worked for the situation, Rick said. But where did you learn it? Scylla pressed. This isn't standard coalition military training. Rick sighed. Earth military academies study historical battles. All of them. Success and failure both. We learn from what worked, what didn't, why. It's called institutional knowledge. Every generation teaches the next. Lessons written in blood don't get forgotten easily. Grant and LYSS arrived together, settling at the table. Stations talking about yesterday, LYSS said. You're famous now, Rick. Great, Rick muttered. That's exactly what I wanted. Commander Orith is holding a commendation ceremony this afternoon, Grant added. The whole team is being recognized. Rick's expression soured. Can I skip it? Absolutely not. Bravik said firmly. You coordinated a successful hostage rescue against superior numbers. You're accepting that commendation. I don't like ceremonies. Nobody cares what you like. Bravik's tone was almost friendly. This is important. For the team, for the coalition, for understanding what humans bring to the military. A young soldier from across the mess hall approached hesitantly. Excuse me. Donnelly, sir, can I ask you something? Rick winced at the sir but nodded. Everyone's talking about what happened, about human combat doctrine. What makes human warriors different from other species? The young soldier species was unrecognizable to Rick, some kind of amphibious race with translucent skin. The mess hall had gone quiet again. Everyone was listening. Rick really hated this. We're not different, he said finally. Not really. Every species has warriors. Every species fights to protect what matters. Humans just had more practice at it. But the records, the young soldier persisted, thousands of years of continuous warfare. How did your people survive it? Rick set down his fork, looked around at the assembled faces, all of them waiting for his answer. We survived because we had to, he said. Earth is a competitive planet. Limited resources, lots of predators. Harsh environments. Early humans didn't have claws or armor or natural weapons. We had brains and endurance. We learned to work together, to plan, to adapt. And when we started fighting each other, those same skills applied. He paused. Every war taught us something. Sometimes the lessons were terrible. Sometimes they were about technology or tactics. But mostly they were about people, about what motivates them, what breaks them, what keeps them fighting when everything says to quit. Is that what happened yesterday? Another voice asked. You knew the pirates would break. I knew they were mercenaries. Rick replied. Mercenaries fight for profit, not principle. Push them hard enough, make the cost higher than the potential gain, they fold. It's predictable. Soldiers fighting for their homes, their families. That's different. That's when things get hard. Bravik spoke up. The human mentioned Thermopylae earlier. The Spartans who died there. They were fighting for their homes. They were, Rick confirmed. Same with Stalingrad. The defenders knew if they lost, their entire country fell. So they fought for every building, every street, every room. For 5 months in winter. That's the difference between mercenary and soldier. Between profit and purpose. Scylla's analytical mind was processing. So human military success isn't about technology or physical superiority. Never was. Rick said, it's about refusing to quit. about protecting what matters, about doing the job even. When the job is terrible, that's not unique to humans. We just had a lot of opportunities to prove it. Commander Orith entered the mess hall. Donnelly, team, briefing room. Now, they followed the commander to a private briefing room. Orith closed the door. The ceremony this afternoon will be formal, he began. Recognition for valor, tactical excellence, successful hostage rescue, standard commendations. He paused. But I wanted to speak with you privately first. Donnelly, your background is largely classified, pre-contact Earth conflicts. But yesterday you demonstrated capabilities that raise questions. I need to know if there are security concerns. Rick shook his head. No, sir. Nothing classified was used. Standard infantry tactics, available in any military history database. Nevertheless, Orith continued, your effectiveness has made an impression. I'm recommending you for an instructor position, teaching unconventional warfare to coalition forces. Rick's expression was pained. Sir, I appreciate it, but I'm not really a teacher. You taught a team of skeptical aliens to execute a perfect guerrilla assault in under 3 hours. Orith countered. I'd say you're an excellent teacher. Bravik spoke up. He taught us more than tactics. He taught us to question our assumptions, to respect what we don't understand. Exactly, Orith said. That's what the coalition needs. Not just human combat skills, but human perspective on warfare, on sacrifice, on what it means to fight for something bigger than yourself. Rick was quiet for a long moment. Then, I'll think about it, sir. Good enough. Orith nodded. Now, ceremony in 2 hours. Be presentable. That afternoon, Rick stood uncomfortably at attention while Commander Orith read the commendation. The team stood with him. Bravik's throat sac was inflated with pride. Scylla's compound eyes were recording everything. When Orith finished, Rick was required to say something. He kept it brief. Yesterday was about teamwork, about trust, about people from different worlds working toward the same goal. That's what the coalition is supposed to be. Not humans teaching aliens or aliens teaching humans. Just soldiers protecting civilians. That's all. The assembled personnel erupted in applause. Later, in the station bar, the team gathered to celebrate. Bravik bought the first round. To Donnelly, he toasted, who proved that human legends are real. To the team, Rick countered, who trusted me when trust was hard. They drank, so Bravik asked quietly, you ever going to tell us the full story? Your time on Earth? Rick smiled slightly. Maybe someday, when we've got more time and more drinks, I'll hold you to that. Outside the bar window, stars wheeled in the darkness. Ships coming and going, species from across the galaxy living and working together. And somewhere in that vast coalition, human history was being written alongside alien futures, not in conquest or dominance, in understanding, in respect, in the quiet certainty that protection, not destruction, was humanity's greatest strength.